Hello, and welcome to the BNP Paribas Asset Management Talking Heads podcast. Every week, Talking Heads will bring you in-depth insights and analysis through the lens of sustainability on the topics that really matter to investors. In this episode, we'll be discussing stewardship, which is where our environmental, social and governance policies become actionable through the direct engagement between us as investors and the companies we invest in. The aim being to drive positive change and safeguard the long-term value of these companies. I'm Andy Craig, co-head of the Investment Insight Centre, and I'm joined today by Rachel Crossley, who's head of stewardship for Europe within the Global Sustainability Centre at BNP Paribas Asset Management. Rachel, welcome, and thanks for joining me.
Thanks. Very good to be here with you today.
Now, Rachel, you lead our stewardship activities in Europe with the aim of delivering BNP Paribas Asset Management's stewardship policy, which includes engaging directly with companies as well as engagement through collaborative investor initiatives and proxy voting. In addition, your role encompasses working with policymakers on key issues relating to sustainable finance and investment, as well as representing BNP Paribas Asset Management in key investor networks. Can you talk us through a little further on your role within the Sustainability Centre at BNP Paribas Asset Management?
Yes, very happy to. So I'm part of a 7-person stewardship team and we're organised geographically. So as you said, I'm head of stewardship for Europe. And the way that we work is we do a lot of active engagement with companies to address global sustainability challenges like climate change, nature loss, inequality, those kinds of themes, because we believe they threaten the long-term viability of all sectors and companies across our global portfolios. So to give a concrete example with respect to climate change, we engage with many companies to ask them, for example, to take action to demonstrate that they're transitioning their businesses in line with the Paris Agreement. We specifically ask that they set net zero ambition backed up by specific quantitative emissions reduction targets for the short, medium and long term, that is out to 2050. We ask for transition plans that outline how they're going to achieve those targets, and we like to see comprehensive annual reporting of their progress against those targets. And another of our key focuses in relation to climate change is how companies lobby in relation to climate regulation.
Lobbying is a topic we hear a lot about, but of course it can also be for a good cause. Positive lobbying can help deliver policies that promote rapid decarbonisation. But is there also lobbying that seeks to delay, dilute or block climate action? There seems to be ample evidence that corporate lobbying often holds back policies such as delivering net zero emissions by 2050. How do you go about addressing these issues as you work with both individual companies and organisations?
There is indeed extensive independent research that demonstrates that one of the main reasons that there can be delay or a watering down of necessary legislation or regulation to tackle the climate crisis is corporate lobbying. And there's an independent research body called InfluenceMap that does that research and produces the analysis. It scours companies' own communications and websites and looks at all the submissions and meetings that are done around the world by regulators when they're consulting on new legislative measures. And then InfluenceMap produces scores and ratings of both companies themselves and the industry associations they belong to in relation to climate lobbying. And then this is the research that we use to inform our engagement in this area, which we do mostly through one of the global collaborative engagement initiatives, Climate Action 100+. So what we do in relation to lobbying is ask that companies operate according to the global standard on responsible climate lobbying. This was something we developed 3 years ago with a large Swedish pension scheme called AP7 and the Church of England Pensions Board. It's a very well-established and well-regarded standard. So what we're doing is asking companies to comply with this standard, and that means we want them to do 4 things effectively. Put in place effective governance and management systems so that they have a way of overseeing all of the lobbying activity that they're doing and ensuring that it's aligned to the Paris Agreement. We want them to demonstrate that any direct lobbying they do themselves with policymakers is supportive of Paris-aligned policy proposals. Very importantly, we need them to have ways to make sure that the lobbying that the industry associations they belong to also supports those kinds of measures aligned to the Paris Agreement, rather than obstructing them. And then, of course, we want transparency. We want annual reporting that goes in depth into all of those areas and through which we can monitor annual progress. So are the companies increasingly lobbying in line with the Paris Agreement, doing that sort of positive lobbying that you mentioned? And are they gradually making sure that their industry associations are also lobbying in support of Paris?
And you mentioned the European Climate Lobbying Working Group. BNP Paribas Asset Management is a member of that working group. Can you talk to us a little bit more about its role?
This is a European working group of the Climate Action 100 Plus investor initiative that I mentioned earlier. So for a bit of background, Climate Action 100 Plus is the world's biggest collaborative investor initiative tackling the climate crisis. It's supported by more than 600 institutional investors around the world from 33 markets. These investors collectively engage with the 170 companies that account for 85% of global corporate greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm co-chair of this European working group, and what we're looking to do is identify those companies that score most poorly against the global standard according to InfluenceMap's assessment, and then provide expertise and support to the various investors that are engaging with those companies to accelerate and deepen that engagement. Usually we do that with around 12 to 15 European companies a year.
Would you say, Rachel, that companies are becoming more open about disclosing their lobbying activities? How does this help the efforts to tackle climate change?
We're very pleased to see progress and accelerating progress. And again, InfluenceMap is the independent organisation that we look to track this. So their data showed that in 2019, for example, the policy engagement of only 2% of the companies they assessed was aligned to the 1.5 degree goal of the Paris Agreement. But by 2024, that was 20%. So that was a really good uplift. In addition, the Climate Lobbying Working Group has seen quite a few successes in this last engagement cycle. We've had Unilever produce a climate lobbying review for the first time. It was very comprehensive, and because it met all of the assessment criteria, it received a score of 100% from InfluenceMap. So it's the only company to have achieved that score, and that was quite impressive to say it was its first review. So we very much welcomed that as a gold standard to ask other companies to also emulate. We saw Danone also improve its disclosures in 2024 and get a score of 50% for its review from InfluenceMap. And then there were other successes, for example, with National Grid. There had been a lot of engagement for several years. But finally, this last year, that company also published a review, as did Naturgy and TotalEnergies. The great thing is that the InfluenceMap data is publicly available, so any investor or stakeholder can log on and have a look at how companies and industry associations are rated and then how they're progressing over time. The working group is currently going through a process of selecting the next tranche of companies that we'll look to support in this next engagement cycle.
Well, that's very encouraging. It's certainly a very significant uplift in terms of the companies participating constructively in disclosing their lobbying activities and working towards climate action. Thank you. That was a very good review, I think, of our stewardship activities, the way in which you interact with the companies that our portfolio managers may be looking to invest in to ensure that they are in line with our environmental, social and governance criteria. Thank you, Rachel, for joining me today.
You're very welcome. Very pleased to have spoken to you today.
That's it for this week's episode of Talking Heads. If you would like more information, please reach out to your BNP Paribas Asset Management contact or check out Viewpoint, our website for investment insights at viewpoint.bnpparibas-am.com. You've been listening to the BNP Paribas Asset Management Talking Heads podcast with me, Andy Craig, and Rachel Crossley, Head of Stewardship for Europe at BNP Paribas Asset Management. Please do join us again next week. Until then, take care.
This presentation includes a discussion on current market events and is not intended as investment advice or an offer of products or services by BNP Paribas Asset Management. Please keep in mind that the information and analysis in this presentation is only current as of the publication date.